Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, as the video title suggests, today is going to be my review of the other PDF that came in my Kickstarter for AAA Games Leagues of Gothic Horror. And this one's going to be the Guide to Mordavia, Land of Horror. Once again, I'm going to try to do this really awkward thing where I show you the cover. There she is. Mordavia, Land of Horror. So, this is a product that, I'm going to, spoiler, I like it. But let me go on and really kind of explain a little bit about it. This is a Kickstarter that I saw. I wasn't sure if I wanted to back. I talked to Anthony a little bit about it. He has inside information because he does edit these things these days, often for AAA games, and will not divulge any of the details. But he'll say, "Ah, this is a pretty good one." So, the Kickstarter involved both the Guide to the Ministry of Unusual Affairs, which I was much more interested in, and this Guide to Mordavia, Land of Horror. And I'm waiting for the physical products. I'm also waiting for my really cool dice from AAA games, which are D6s, but they're D2s. They're so for use with Ubiquity, little bat wings on them. Some Leagues of Gothic Horror dice. So I'm really excited about all that because I like dice. But anyhow, I was really interested in the Ministry of Unusual Affairs because I figured, wow, that'll be really cool. I already found that very compelling in the book, and the idea of playing something where you're kind of like the Avengers, as Wiggy kind of pointed out to me, that was what it was based upon. Mordavia, when I looked at it, there wasn't a lot of description, but, my initial incorrect impression was, it's probably going to be their Transylvania. And I imagine they don't want to use Transylvania because, well, that's been done. So, why don't, they're probably going to want their own land with a vampire. And, where is Mordavia? Well, Mordavia is this fictional duchy. It's actually modeled after a county somewhere in northern Romania near Ukraine. It's got a little fictional history and everything. Really, really well done. However, I open the book in PDF. I start reading. By the time I get to page 4, my eyes get like saucers, and I realize this is not going to be like Transylvania. And there's so much I would love to say, but I'm not going to spoil it. But you open the book, you start reading, and you're like, oh man, this is twisted. This is a thing, a supplement that if you're going to play in a game of this, you should not read. You just don't want it spoiled for you. But I really, really am impressed with this. The only complaint I have with this product is that there's no map. And that's a small complaint. I'm a visual person. I'm a person that doesn't necessarily do really good with descriptions, and it's hard for me to really see what things are like. It is very, very minor. They go over, it gives you a really good description of the geography, what the mountains of the land are like. Somebody smarter than I could actually, draw that up. But he leaves it up to the imagination. Where's this capital city, capital town? Where are these other villages and where are these other landmarks? It's a little bit vague, although he kind of gives you some geographical references for them. However, that's really, really minor, not a big deal. But one of those things I would have loved to have seen, just a little, even if it was a crude map, something that I could draw. But anyhow, let's get on to the actual meat and potatoes of this sucker. This book is actually set up in I believe like 4 parts. They give you an introduction, they give you a history of the land, which is really cool. Right from the like 16th or 17th century. I think 16th century. History of what's going on in the land, what the big bad thing in Mordavia is, and I don't want to say any more than that, even though I really like to, because once you get to page 4, you're like, oh my god. So it gives you an idea of the history with that. It gives you the second chapter really gives you this kind of overview of what the land is actually like in terms of the geography, in terms of the culture, in terms of the superstitions that people might have. Really adds a lot of flavor. What are the main exports, imports? What is town life like? It's a very sequestered, very quaint place because of the mountainous regions around it. So it's been isolated from quite a few things. It is one of the things I kept smiling to myself and thinking about as I read this is that it reminded me in some ways of an old Judges Guild module. And I'm talking about the ones way back in the day from 1980s. Not as sparse as one. But if you're unfamiliar with those, they were kind of setting, system and setting neutral. There weren't too many games out back then, but you could read them and you were like, I'm not sure if this is for Tunnels and Trolls or for Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, and they kind of assumed that you were going to fill in some of the details, and they didn't give you a heck of a lot of details. They gave you salient points. This I don't want to misrepresent that product and say that's what's going on, but there is a certain feel of neutrality, and that you can. Well, I'm going to explain how that how that happens. But he does a great job with all that. Then goes on into the gazetteer of Mordavia, and then in the fourth section, it's about notable persons, any kind of monsters, stock characters, etc. So, at this point, in terms of some neutrality, here's one of the brilliant things he did with this game, which I had just incredible amounts of respect for. He could have just made this a setting for Leagues of Gothic Horror and nothing else. And that's really what this product is. This is a setting. This is a small little country that it's a place of interest, but a place of quite a bit of interest, especially due to its sequestered nature. But he could have said, you know what, if you're going to play Leagues of Gothic Horror, this is that's what you're going to use this for. However, because it's a Ubiquity game, because Ubiquity games tend to work really well with each other, because the system is a system and it just meshes. He gives you a bunch of different ideas. Well, why would people go there in the first place? Gives you a bunch of ideas, like either maybe you're a member of the Ministry of Unusual Affairs and you're tracking some kind of nefarious something, and it leads you to Mordavia. Maybe you're a member, you're playing just Leagues of Adventure, and you are adventuring, and at some point you run across this small little backwater country. Now here's the neat thing: the gazetteer, the people of interest, etc. They give you a snapshot of now. But it doesn't say specifically when now is. Now, Leagues of Adventure, Leagues of Gothic Horror, they're set nominally in about 1890, the Victorian, the Gothic era, right? However, he gives you a history from the 16th century all the way up to like after World War II. So he mentions, well, it could be this, or you could be playing All for One Regime Diabolique. It could be like 1636. And somehow the Musketeers, or perhaps maybe, when I funded the other Kickstarter for the expansion for All for One, where it's Satan's Kingdom, Satan's Playground. The idea is other countries involved in the 30 Years' War. Maybe you're in that time period and you end up in Mordavia for some reason, Or, and this was the thing that I just really smiled and had a lot of respect for, maybe you're playing the original Ubiquity game. Maybe you're playing Hollow Earth Expedition by Exile Game Studios, and it's 1936. And the Nazis have become interested in something in Mordavia. And you and your group of intrepid explorers, adventurers, movie makers, whatever you happen to be, you stumble across Mordavia. So you can enter this, there's many ways. There's not just one way in and one way out. There's all different angles to get into Mordavia, which is really, really cool. So, in a way that's part of the whole neutral feeling of this. But I love the fact that you could take this from several different angles. Then it goes on to give you the gazetteer gives you a whole bunch of places of interest, and a lot of places are within the capital itself. I think it's Karnstein. Then there's a bunch of outlying areas, and it's things like this particular church, this particular watermill, this castle, this observatory, this health spa, etc. Gives you a whole bunch of locations. Each location in the gazetteer gives you gives you a basic idea of what's going on, what it looks like. Some of the ratings, if you want to use horror ratings, or I forget the other rating they use in Leagues of Gothic Horror expansion, a rating given to how creepy a place is. I'm using the wrong words, but anyhow, gives you a basic idea. But then doesn't tell you an awful lot about this person of interest and what monster or fell creature or whatever might be there. It does give you some references here and there that you will need another supplement. You might need the Guide to Apparitions or whatever. If you don't have those, I can easily see that if you're familiar enough with Ubiquity, it gives you just enough information, you could probably make something up. But all the supplements are really cool. Anyhow, don't want to sound like an advertisement here. Anyhow, but gives you a real brief, but good description of all these different places, what it's going to look like when you show up there. Then it gets onto these notable people, and before I get to the real meat of the discussion, it gives you a lot of stock characters too. What a tradesman would look like, statistics-wise, what the angry peasant mob might look like. Various sort of people, the gypsies, etc. Then gets that back down to these people of interest, and here's one of the really, really neat things that Wiggy did, which once again reminded me of this kind of Judges Guild sort of like amorphous thing going on. Because as you read the Gazetteer, you're like, oh, this is really kind of sparse. Then in the back, the notable people, it gives you more information. But there's this section, earlier on, I believe it's actually in the Gazetteer, where he talks about the idea that you're free to change any particular person. He gives you, with most of these people, he gives you 2 or 3 options. There's a couple different flavors that the supernatural can go in. So he said, well, the truth really could be this, or it could really be that. Maybe this guy really is the thrall of a vampire, let's say. Or maybe actually he's really involved in some other bizarre, otherworldly, sinister stuff. He lets you know, okay, if that's the case, here's the statistics change. Or he could simply be a guy that the people are afraid of, but he's completely clueless. Maybe there is a vampire in the area, but he's not a thrall of that vampire at all. He's just some guy that just acts a little weird because he's socially inept. In that case, change the statistics to this. Because when you first read through the whole Gazetteer, you can be a little bit taken aback, like, oh my God, the whole place is crawling with the crazies, with monsters around every turn. It doesn't have to be that way. You decide, what's really true, what's not true. I love that part about it, where you can tailor. Not only can you tailor it to your taste, like what do you want to actually be the truth or the focal points in that land as people show up there and have some kind of adventure. But he doesn't just say, oh, just make your own stuff up. He pretty much says, okay, well, if you choose to go this direction, have it be like this. If you choose to go this other direction, have it be like that. Does a lot of the legwork for you in this really short page count. It's like 60 some odd pages. But, just a phenomenal setting. And it runs the gamut from the, you can run it in a very sort of stock, much more in line with the fiction of the era, so it could be a little Transylvanian, if you want it to, or you can go in a much more bizarre direction, or a mishmash. It's up to you how you want to run that. And you're at any point, you're free to make one particular character can either go from being the most sinister guy in the valley to just being some kind of confused peasant who really has no idea what's going on. Lets you make those calls. So this is a setting that you could use for a long, long time. You could run quite a campaign in here, or have roads lead back here. There's all and once again, you'd be playing Hollow Earth Expedition and end up in Mordavia, and have to deal with something that you didn't want to because the Nazis are into it too. So just hats off. It was a product I had my doubts about, but it turns out two for two in this Kickstarter. Really enjoyed this product, and I don't want to say anything more about it because I'll spoil it. Have a good one, kids.